Welcome back to News Hour. Thank you for staying with us. It's now time for deliberations right here in studio. And let's just set the pace, because not too long ago, US President Donald Trump imposed a 10% reciprocal export tariff on Kenya that was set to begin today, Wednesday, April 9th. Now, there was a fallout from that 10% reciprocal tariff imposed by the Trump administration on Kenyan goods, and that decision comes with both pros and cons. You might ask, why exactly was Kenya targeted and was among over the 180 countries facing reciprocal tariffs, while the US flagged key trade barriers in Kenya? Case in point, a 35% tariff on second-hand clothes, commonly referred to as mitumba. There's corruption and a series of temporary tax waivers to curb rises in domestic food prices. And just today, since that particular tariff was supposed to take effect, we understand through the international news outlets that Trump has announced a 90-day pause on tariffs for most countries, hopefully including Kenya, but he has raised them to 125% for China. That's according to the latest reports emanating from the United States. But we just want to analyze the impact of the US policy change right here in Kenya and across the region. In studio, I'm joined by Odhiambo Ramogi. He's the CEO of Elim Capital and an economist. Karibu sana to our studios. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jesse.
It's good to have you with us. So let's start off the cuff, because we know there's a 90-day pause, if I may call it that. Perhaps it might be returned after this 90 days. But let's take a look at what these tariffs generally mean for Kenyans' exports. How will the tariff affect the cost of doing business for Kenyans who are exporting to the United States of America?
Thank you. Yes, Donald Trump has slapped us with a 10% tariff, reciprocal tariff. Perhaps it might help you understand why, in the first place, is the U.S. keen on these reciprocal tariffs. U.S. is a net importer. Of the 10 leading trading partners of the United States of America, none of them, receives more from the U.S. than they export to the U.S. I think number 11, Netherlands, is the one that receives more from the U.S. than they take to the U.S. And so the new president feels that the balance of trade is not in their favor, and they need to do something to ensure that their economy catches up, and hence the reciprocal tariffs. The tariff slapped on Kenya, however, is inconsequential to them, because the U.S. has a trade, international trade in the U.S. is around 3.9 trillion US dollars. Of that, what they do, the business they do with Kenya is around 1.5 billion, and that is if you add what is imported and what is exported, a total of about 1.5 billion, 782 and 737. Now, of this is roughly 0.0019% of their international trade, of their collective total international trade. Yeah. So it's immaterial, really. My guess is that somehow this is a nice way of commencing conversations on other interests that they may have in the countries that they have slapped with this trade. Will this affect us on this other end? It certainly will, because while we are immaterial to them, they are very material to us. The USA is our second largest trading partner after Uganda. They do around 9%, they are about 9% of our international trade. We export tea, we export textiles, we export coffee to them. What this means is that of the 737 in value that we export to the US, around 190 of it is tourism, so that might not be affected. But the trade in goods, which is around 500 million USD, will be affected. Now, if you slap a 10% on that, that's around 7 billion shillings. I saw Waziri saying it's around 12 billion, but really from my calculations, around 7 billion shillings. And so that is the difference between what we are enjoying now and what things will look like after the tariffs come into play.
Okay, let's see what this 90-day time frame will mean for Kenyan exporters to the United States. But just data from the United States Trade Representative's Office show that Kenya exported goods worth 95.3 billion Kenya shillings to the US and imported goods worth 101 billion shillings. So you can look at the trade imbalance kidogo, and even as we talk about that, since May 2000, Kenya has been exempted from tariffs when exporting to the United States under the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, commonly referred to as AGOA, which expires this September. So there's a high possibility that AGOA won't be renewed, looking at Trump's policies. Well, what's the net effect of the end of this tariff exemption to Kenya and the African region?
Let me start with the trade difference that you have highlighted.
Yeah.
Our trade difference has been improving over the years. It started from around 800 billion USD to now around 81 million USD, 800 million USD to now around 81 million USD. Mm-hmm. And this is courtesy of AGOA. The AGOA trade agreement, the African Growth Opportunities Agreement, that facilitated the export of textiles to the American economy. And we sell, the textiles we sell is available on large outlets like Walmart, Levi's, Target, etc. Mm-hmm. So they are a significant trading partner. And I think this was also facilitated by the special economic zones where you find these textile manufacturers are based in. Now, on the AGOA, I have two comments. One is that, well, it has had times where it has expired previously and it has been renewed. However, with the new Trump policy, trade policy, again, yes, there is uncertainty as to whether it will be renewed or not. However, on the other side, mm-hmm. since Trump's first term, we have had conversations with the U.S. about a bilateral arrangement between Kenya and the United States. And this started with the FTA, the free trade agreement that Trump proposed in the year 2020, before he left. When President Biden came to power, he proposed STIP, Strategic Trade and Investment Partnership between Kenya and the USA. And there have been conversations around that so that there is a bilateral arrangement. If the STIP were to be prioritized, because whether it's Trump or the Biden administration, the United States of America recognizes the importance of Kenya as a trade partner. And that is a matter of fact. It doesn't matter who is president. So if then we can prioritize and push STIP to be enforced and to be put in play, then I think our loss of AGOA as a trade partnership might not be felt in the long run.
Okay, that's proper to note. Let's come closer home, because the cabinet recently approved a 4.26 trillion shilling budget for the upcoming 2025-2026 financial year. And that budget, which will be presented to Parliament for further deliberation, allocates 3.09 trillion shillings for recurrent spending and 725.1 billion shillings for development initiatives. Overall, the expenditure represents 22.1% of Kenya's gross domestic product. So let's talk about Kenya's economic outlook, because we've seen shortfalls in revenue collection, in substantial debt service costs, and rising expenditure pressures on social programs. Talk about health, talk about education. What exactly is the economic outlook, bearing in mind this is yet another big budget, the biggest we've ever had yet again? We keep on saying that year in, year out. Yeah.
Right. Well, for obvious reasons, the budget needs to expand, because the government always needs to expand its expenditure. Yeah. But let me start from the positive side. Mm-hmm. What I am happy about is that our budget deficits have been reducing in the last 3 years progressively. We have seen about 1% reduction in our budget deficits this year, and I think that's a good direction to go. I still feel we could do a lot more in terms of improving the budget deficit, but still, that's progress in the right direction. Where perhaps I find difficulty, especially in our budgeting framework, is that overall, for some reason, everyone in government believes development expenditure to be brick and mortar. We've built roads, we've built hospitals, we've built this. And so they do not see investment into the human development angle as development, which is education, which is health, and which is investment in women empowerment, which is investment in youth empowerment. They do not see that as development. And that is a major departure from our understanding as economists of development. And I think that is why you find that a government which is heavily indebted, because we are now, according to Cabinet Secretary Mbadi, we are now at 12 trillion, which is a lot higher than where we found ourselves after the second term of Kibaki. But so you find a government which is highly indebted as ours, still insisting on going to borrow so that they can fulfill the law that they are really having expenditure into development expenditure. So that really, I don't think we need to have heavy expenditure into brick and mortar at a time where we have to borrow for that. Because the 700 you have quoted, the 700 into development expenditure, that is the exact deficit. And that is money. Deficit simply means that that is money that needs to be borrowed. And we will come into the local economy, we will still crowd out businesses, we will drive the interest rates up and make the economy even worse than it is. And so for me, I am celebrating the fact that we are reducing the deficits. I am unhappy with the fact that our focus on development expenditure is largely on brick and mortar. We want to build stuff to say we have, and take photos of them and put on X and Facebook.
Tumefanya tumetenga.
Tumetenga.
Anyway, let's talk about pending bills, because a team appointed by President William Ruto to review pending bills has issued its first report. They cleared debts of 206 billion shillings for payment. And we know that small businesses have really been struggling with cash shortages owing to these outstanding debts. So in these pending bills that have been approved by the review committee that is chaired by the former Auditor General, these are pending bills that are below 10 million shillings. How impactful would be the clearance of these pending bills to Kenya's economy in terms of money circulation and whatnot?
It's huge.
Yeah.
What that means, if you've looked at the money supply right now, I think it's the lowest we've had in 10 years. But if you also look at, credit, private sector credit, it has also reported very low figures in the last 2 quarters. And so any money that is coming into the economy, circulating to the suppliers, and of course later on to the people who work with the suppliers, is welcome. And so if we can at least clear those balances where the pending bill is less than 10 million shillings, I think it will make a huge impact on the economy, because that money will create circulation, and circulation really creates growth. But let me also comment on pending bills. Really, pending bills is just corruption wrapped in beautiful terms, because it means that someone was given the work to do, and someone somewhere felt they are not a priority in paying. The people who know, the people in power, some of them even get paid upfront before the work is done. And so I think we need to, any sane administration or any sane government comes into office, realizes there are bills that needs to be paid, should not authorize any more payments, or at least should have a plan on how to pay these pending bills. So the fact that the national government has to intervene for even county governments to pay their debts, come on. I think we need to be better than that.
Quite so. So what targeted sector-specific investments should we focus on in the next financial year? Talk to us about the agriculture value chains. We've heard that, agriculture is a backbone of Kenya's economy, because this is all in a bid to meet our annual revenue collection target. So where should we invest heavily?
If I might go back to our conversation about the trade tariffs between Kenya and the USA, I saw Cabinet Secretary for Trade alluding to the fact that the tariffs might benefit us because he says what the tariff we've received is lower than our competitors in the textile production space. I have two comments on that. Well, first of all, I don't think so. The countries we are competing with in that space are Vietnam, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Pakistan, India. Most of them in the Asian stretch. Now, Vietnam and Bangladesh are top 10 exporters to the US. And before Trump came into power, they were already paying a tariff of 22%. So it means that even though we were paying no tariffs, they were still beating us because they are delivering over 16 billion worth of trade to the US. So that's the first thing that he needs to know, is that really it made no difference, because majorly the textile coming from Asia is a lot cheaper than the textile coming from Kenya. For some reason, they produce the whole value chain. We don't. A lot of our textile is imported and then processed here and then now sent out again. The second thing he needs to appreciate is that some of the 65% of the textile industry in Indonesia is investment from the US. So it's Americans who invest there and then now bring back the money. So if the cabinet secretary is serious about taking advantage of the trade issues, the trade war that the US has opened, he should not really pursue hope as a strategy in beating our competitors. He should pursue investment. Because if that investment can come into agriculture, say if, for example, at this time we had agriculture at play as we had hoped when this administration was coming into power, slicing out some of the competitors for that market would have been easier. But right now, it's not too late still. We can still invest in agriculture, and some of those agricultural products mature in less than a year and still capture those markets. I mean, we export avocado to China. We can still export avocado to the US. And that is a possibility. But the second thing also that he needs to be alive to is manufacturing. And manufacturing, we do not need to pursue the American market. We just need to pursue the regional market. If Uganda is receiving our manufactured products, it means then that the region is amiable to our products. Both Uganda and Tanzania are importing our manufactured products, which means then there's an opportunity in South Sudan, there's an opportunity in Ethiopia, there's an opportunity in Rwanda, Burundi. Okay. And expanding our manufacturing will enable us to take our products there. So if investment is to come, then it needs to focus on both agriculture and manufacturing. Agriculture providing the raw material base, and manufacturing ensuring that these things are properly processed before going out there. Okay, that's well noted. In 30 seconds or so, are we manipulating our exchange rates? Well, that's the big question. I will not expose myself to lawsuits from the CBK. Okay. But it's the biggest miracle that we have managed to stabilize our exchange rate for over a year. And because last year, yes, it was explainable that BlackRock had brought in about $1 billion into the economy circulating, and that helped. Right now, it's hard to explain why and how are we able to stabilize it, because our balance of trade is in the negative, our debt is in the negative. It's very hard to explain why and how we are able to stabilize it. So I leave that question to be answered by the people at Central Bank, Kamau Thuge and company. I think they are able to. Okay, well noted. Thanks for your input. We definitely appreciate your time as we had this conversation, just looking at Kenya's economic outlook, the Trump tariffs headache, and what exactly they mean, even as there's a 90-day time frame for Kenya to perhaps negotiate with the US to avoid that 10% reciprocal tariff. Odhiambo Ramogi, asante sana for your time. He's the CEO of Elim Capital, an economist and a frequent contributor right here at the Standard Group. That's how we wrap up tonight's edition of News Hour. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're adequately informed. My name is Jesse Rogers. Good evening.